The story begins on a very rainy day. A little boy is crying and says to his grandfather, "For God's sake, don't leave me alone and go." But the grandfather replies, "My journey is dangerous, and you can't come with me, Gene." After that, they part ways, and the grandfather leaves. Now, Gene is grown up and 17 years old. He wakes up because today he has a match, but unfortunately, he breaks his alarm and doesn't realize it. In a rush, he grabs his bike to avoid being late for the race. While cycling quickly, he almost runs into an old woman walking on the street. However, Gene skillfully controls his bike and manages to avoid her, but instead crashes into the bridge railing and falls. You might think he'd be hurt, right? No, Gene gathers his strength, picks up his bike, and gets back on track. But where is Gene really going? He's headed to the high school hero competition that everyone is talking about, with many hoping to win. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a group of people who failed to enter the competition are gathered, and a girl named Mira asks them where the competition is taking place. At the same time, Gene is cycling and spots a thief stealing an old woman's purse. Feeling sorry for her, Gene chases after the thief. The thief sees Gene and thinks, "Does this Becto kid really think he can catch me on a bike? Something must be wrong with his brain." But Gene keeps chasing him relentlessly. The thief tries to escape to an area he thinks Gene can't reach. But you're very wrong. Gene keeps chasing him without stopping. As the thief runs, Gene picks up speed and gets closer. However, Mira suddenly falls and her glasses break. Gene apologizes for the broken glasses, but stays focused on chasing the thief. But Mira doesn't just sit back. She draws her sword and starts attacking the thief. Gene then explains to Mira what's happening, and she is moved by his story. She decides to join him in catching the thief. Just when the thief thinks he's safe, he's shocked to see they're still after him. Gene stops his bike suddenly, and Mira leaps to knock the thief down with her sword. But there's a sign ahead that says, "Stop." The thief thinks he's gotten away, but suddenly a man punches him, knocking him off his motorcycle. Finally, the three of them arrive at the competition, which features the kingdom's strongest students. Whoever wins this competition will be granted one wish. Anything they desire will come true. When they arrive, they introduce themselves, Gene, Mori, Mira, and Han. The commentator calls the participants into the arena and explains the competition rules, including the nano-healing system, where each participant has a watch that will heal all their injuries during the fight. They just need to fight with all their strength without fear of getting hurt. And the battle begins as soon as they enter. The fight starts. Some people are using kung fu, beating down anyone who approaches. Others launch powerful, relentless attacks. Mira fights calmly with her sword technique. But among all this, Gene is targeted because he looks weak. However, he manages to defeat everyone, taking them down one by one. The judges watching seem pleased with how the match is going. Suddenly, a final participant is announced into the competition. This participant appears very confident, enters the arena immediately, and starts attacking the others mercilessly. He stomps on one person's head and mocks another. Mira can't stand it and attacks him with her sword. Mira is fast, attacking with all her might, but time seems to shield him from all her strikes. He even belittles Mira by catching her sword between his legs. However, Gene finally lands a blow on the man's leg at the last moment. Gene says, "Now I should fight seriously," and strikes him with all his power. The scene then shifts to a military organization discussing a mysterious phenomenon on an island. Suddenly, an alarm goes off, and an intruder enters the facility, introducing himself as Park Mujin, who seems to have big plans. Back at the competition, the battle ends, and Gene successfully defeats the second participant. She is in the process of recovering from an injury, and when the three of them return home, they begin to get to know each other more deeply. Each asks the other why they joined the competition. Gene says that he joined to become stronger and to fight strong people. Meanwhile, Handy says his very close friend is being treated in the hospital, and he wants to cure him of a deadly disease, but he doesn't reveal the real reason. He just says he joined to win money. Mira then says her dream is to restore her family's dojo. Gene asks why she let her sword get stolen during the competition. As Mira tries to explain that she wasn't wearing her glasses, she sees her sword being held by a highly skilled thief. Mira immediately chases him to retrieve her sword, but she trips and the sword falls into the sea in front of them. Gene offers to get it, but Mira slaps him and says she doesn't want to see him anymore. After that, Mira goes into the water alone to search for her sword. While searching, she remembers her grandfather giving her the sword and asking her to restore the family dojo. At that moment, she feels very sad. However, not long after, Gene arrives with a flashlight and starts searching for the sword with her. Mira apologizes for slapping him and explains that the sword was a gift from her grandfather. Gene then says, "If it's from your grandfather, we have to find it right away." Henny then arrives with a bigger flashlight to help them search for the sword faster. From this point, the three of them begin to become close friends. The next day, the individual matches of the competition begin. All the participants gather in the arena, waiting for their turn to fight. The first round is very easy for all the participants, and they defeat their opponents within seconds. However, in the second round, Gene is sleeping while waiting for his turn when he arrives and says he's going to destroy him in the arena. Gene doesn't respond and continues sleeping. Another participant approaches them and tells Ing that fighting outside the arena is not allowed. However, Ing gets angry and is about to attack him, but Gene arrives just in time and says, "Don't leave your guard open, kid." The boy greatly appreciates Jin's help and thanks him. Time passes, and it's time for Ing to fight the boy, who seems very strong in the competition. However, Ing removes one of his armed guards and begins attacking with full force. The boy falls to the ground and can't move, but Ing continues beating and intimidating him in front of everyone. The audience is shocked and wants the referee to stop the match by any means. However, Ing keeps attacking the boy until he breaks almost all his bones. He does all this to cover up his weakness after being defeated by someone earlier. Ing keeps forcing the boy to apologize, but the boy refuses and says, "I will never give up or apologize to someone like you." Ing becomes furious, removes his other arm guard, and begins crushing the boy's body. But do you think Gene will let this happen? No, Gene jumps in and kicks Ing, sending him flying. Gene then says, "I know I didn't hit you that hard. Try attacking me with all your strength." Ing tries to attack Gene with all his might, but Gene kicks him so hard that he shatters the arena. The audience and the referee are shocked by Jin's power, but they stop the match because Gene broke the rules by interfering. Meanwhile, Ing starts recalling his past defeat when a woman gave him dark powers. He then attacks everyone with the intent to kill. But will Gene just stand by? No. Gene uses his ultimate move and completely destroys Ing. The audience and the referee are stunned by Jin's strength, but he doesn't have time to celebrate his victory when suddenly he collapses and is restrained. Yes, Park Moo-jin, the founder of the competition and one of the strongest people in the kingdom, appears. He informs the audience that Gene broke the competition rules and will be imprisoned while the referee committee discusses his punishment. The audience was thrilled with Jin's heroic actions. However, behind the scenes, a secret organization was plotting something big. Meanwhile, the referee committee was discussing what would happen to Gene and the other two participants. It turned out that the other two would no longer compete. One had suffered severe physical injuries, while the other had experienced mental trauma. A girl on the committee said it was all Jin's fault and that they should expel him from the competition. However, Park recognized Jin's name and was shocked when he discovered Jin's connection to his grandfather. Park then decided that Gene would remain in the competition. Meanwhile, Mira was in the arena, facing a woman named Mason, who appeared very tough. The audience was rooting for Mason, except for a few men who knew Mira. The fight began, and Mason seemed to dominate. She managed to knock down and strike Mira with her sword, but her attacks had no effect on her. At that moment, Mason used her ultimate move, knocking Mira to the ground, and her sword slipped from her hand. Mason started to celebrate, thinking she had defeated Mira. However, Mira shocked everyone by getting back up. She used a sword technique taught by her grandfather and managed to injure Mason without using a sword. She then executed another move with her bare hands and defeated Mason. The entire audience was disappointed, except for a few men who were very happy, and Gene, who was watching, was overjoyed that Mira had won. Soon after, Park Moo-jin approached Gene and said, "I'll let you continue in the tournament if you can defeat this commissioner." Gene eagerly agreed and said, "Okay." Before Gene left, Park gave him a pouch of fruit and asked him to eat it. Gene was excited and said, "All right." On his way home, he met Mira and Han, and they discussed what would happen tomorrow. Everyone was happy that Gene wouldn't be expelled from the tournament. At the same time, a girl told Park that the fruit given to Gene could kill him if he was just an ordinary human. Park replied, "We need to make sure if he really is the grandson of the tiger or not." At that moment, Gene began eating the cursed fruit. As soon as he bit into it, his entire body was in pain. He collapsed to the ground, blood spilling from his mouth. Is this the end of Gene, my friend? The next day, Han went to visit his friend at the hospital, who had joined the tournament to pay for medical treatment. Han introduced his friend to Gene and Mira, mentioning that his friend's match would take place that day. His friend tried to cheer Han up by joking around. After that, Han entered the arena to face a boy named Beck. The referee prepared them, and the battle began. Beck said to Han, "By the looks of your hands, you're an excellent karate fighter." Han looked at his hands and replied, "Yes." Beck responded, "I've studied everything about karate for 3 years, and I'm going to defeat you now." Han answered, "All right." Beck attacked with his weapon, managing to injure most of Han's body. Han was not fully aware and took a series of blows. Beck said, "Didn't I tell you I would beat you now?" Han was in a tough spot. He could only try to dodge Beck's attacks while starting to study his opponent's movements. After a while, the two struck at each other, trying to determine the winner. However, Beck's foot slipped, and he nearly lost. But surprisingly, Han didn't hit him. Instead, he let himself be injured and extended a hand to help Beck up. "What remarkable sportsmanship, my friend," Beck asked. "Why didn't you hit me?" Han replied, "Only a coward strikes someone in that position." Beck was pleased to hear Han's words and said, "Get ready, I'm going to fight you with all my strength." The two resumed their fight. Beck managed to injure Han, and Han was on the verge of defeat. "Is this the end for Han, my friend?" Beck said to Han, "I've struck you in 12 points, even penetrating your internal organs. There's no way you can go on from here." At that moment, Han remembered his friend who was battling an illness. He recalled his friend's words, "Life is a struggle. Never give up." Han gathered all his strength and shouted, "Let's go." Beck attacked with all his power, but Han used the first style of his fist technique and defeated him. After that, Han applied the second technique, immobilizing Beck's movements. Han unleashed punches and kicks from all directions. Beck was helpless. In the end, Beck collapsed to the ground, defeated. Everyone was astonished by Han's strength, and they were overjoyed. After the battle, it was Jin's turn to fight the commissioner. At that time, Jin was still asleep, recalling some strange and vague memories. However, shortly after, Jin opened his eyes. The commissioner was already waiting, but Jin hadn't arrived yet. Some of the audience began to leave, disappointed, and decided to go. Park, who was sitting in tense anticipation, continued to wait. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Jin has arrived." Park smiled. The commissioner said to Jin, "Were you hiding in the bathroom out of fear?" Jin didn't respond. He felt a heat spreading through his body. The referee began explaining the rules of their fight. If Jin could defeat the commissioner, he would return to the tournament. The fight began, and in the blink of an eye, Jin was already in front of the commissioner and said, "Take off your glasses." Jin knocked him to the ground, and the referee quietly declared, "Jin wins this match." The commissioner was unhappy with the result and attacked Jin again with all his might, but he still lost. Jin felt something strange happening in his body. The commissioner, furious, unleashed his full power, releasing something from within himself called Tarek. The creature began attacking Jin from all directions. Jin ran, not knowing where to go. Just when he was about to be killed, several other commissioners intervened to protect him. Park Mujin entered the arena and said to the Green Commissioner, "Your pay is cut for 3 months. You know why?" Seeing Jin unconscious, someone approached him and said, "It's over. You are a descendant of T-Jin, the little tiger. I won't let you get away from me." After Jin, Mira, and Dai continued to win, they advanced to the semifinals. Mira was set to face Dai, while Jin would fight another opponent. As they were walking together, they suddenly saw someone approaching, stepping out of a car, kneeling down, and proposing to Mira. "What's going on?" A few days later, Mira was sitting with her younger brother, attending to her wedding dress. Did she really agree to marry? The man showed up again at Myra's training ground to propose once more after being rejected in front of Jin and Dai. Mira rejected him again and said, "I'm still too young." But this time the man said, "I'll restore your family dojo. I'm the only one who can help you." He even learned everything for Myra's sake. That's when Mira began to reconsider and eventually agreed to marry him. However, her uncle sensed that Mira didn't truly want to get married. After all her efforts, surely she wouldn't give up on her dream and let someone else fulfill it for her. So, Myra's uncle went to meet the prospective groom and said, "Mira is rushing this decision, and I think she's still too young to marry." But the man replied, "No, I will marry her. I'm the only one who can restore your family's dojo, unlike you and your brother, who failed." Myra's uncle could only lower his head in silence. Meanwhile, Jin was sitting in a restaurant, overhearing some girls talking about Myra's marriage to that famous man. Jin was shocked to learn that Mira had agreed to marry. He immediately went to Myra's house and asked, "Why did you agree to marry? Have you forgotten about your dream?" Mira responded, "He will make my dream come true." Jin said, "Will you let all your hard work go to waste and let someone else fulfill your dream?" Mira then closed the door in front of him. Jin then called Dai and told him everything. Dai said, "Maybe she's happy. Just let it be." But Jin replied, "No, I won't let her." The next day, Mira wore her wedding dress and prepared for her wedding. Her uncle saw her fake smile and decided to go to her fiancé to cancel the wedding at the last minute. At that moment, Mira saw her uncle and felt relieved. She then looked at her fiancé and said, "You know why I'm marrying you, right?" The man replied, "Because I'm going to return the dojo to you, right?" Mira answered, "Exactly." Myra's younger sister then found out that Mira wasn't marrying the man she loved, but was doing it for the sake of her family. However, at that moment, Jin suddenly appeared and said, "I don't like this marriage. Should we stop it?" Mira replied, "Let's." The two of them headed to the entrance where the guards tried to stop Jin. Jin didn't want to hit them because they weren't part of the tournament, but he still tried to get past them. After a brief fight, Jin managed to get past the guards and entered. Meanwhile, inside the building, Mira was already on stage with her uncle. It turned out her fiancé didn't love her. He only wanted to marry her because he was after her hidden power, a power even Mira herself hadn't realized yet. At the right moment, Jean and Dai entered the wedding ceremony. Myra's fiancé said, "Enough, we don't need any more interruptions." He took his sword and attacked Jean and Dai with his power, but Dai managed to stop him, allowing Jean to speak with Mira. Jean asked, "Why are you doing all this? Don't you know that dreams mean nothing if you don't make them come true yourself? Are you really going to give up everything now and get married?" Mira then began to remember her struggles and sacrifices to fulfill her grandfather's dream. She was moved by Jin's words and began to feel heartache. Her uncle also intervened and said, "You can't keep torturing yourself like this." Myra's younger sister agreed, and Mira finally remembered her grandfather's message, "Fulfill your dreams in your own way." Mira cried and decided to cancel her wedding. Mira then approached her fiancé and said, "Sorry, but I won't marry you." Her fiancé laughed, unleashing dark energy similar to that of a commissioner, and attacked Jean and Dai. However, Mira took the blow to protect them. Afterward, Mira used the moon distance technique and defeated him completely. The wedding was successfully called off. But after that, Myra's fiancé stole her sword and refused to return it. However, Mira wasn't bothered and said, "My grandfather's spirit is within me, not in that sword," and she laughed sincerely. In the end, Dai's condition worsened after witnessing the situation, as if he were in the final moments of his life. After that, Dave went to work, and it was clear that his mental state was no longer well. He even started hitting all the customers. One day, when the fight between him and Mira Jane was supposed to happen, he overslept and arrived late. When he got there, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. He saw Day hitting Mira mercilessly at her injuries. Mira fell to the ground unconscious, and Day won the fight. After the fight, Jim saw Day and was furious with him. It seemed like the situation was about to turn ugly, wasn't it, my friend? Then, we flash back to 2 years ago, when Day first met his friend, who always argued with him. We learned that he was the only loyal friend Day had throughout his life. After that, Day was in the bathroom, vomiting blood, regretting what he had done to Mira. He remembered his sick friend and Mira, and wasn't sure if he had done the right thing or not. But do you know why Day did that? Let me tell you. After his friend's condition worsened, and it seemed like he was going to die, Day went to Park and asked him to heal his friend using nanotechnology. However, Park said that if Day wanted his friend to be healed, he had to do what Park asked. Day agreed, and Park asked him to win all the upcoming matches brutally. Of course, all of this was done to test Jin's strength and see if he would become as great as his grandfather. The next day, Jin won his match against his opponent in mere seconds, looking extremely angry. He then went to the hospital to visit Mira, who was being treated, and apologized for what Day had done. He said, "I really didn't know he would act like that." Mira replied, "It's okay. We don't know what he's going through. Just focus on your fight." Jin agreed, and the day ended. Finally, the day of the big match arrived, Jin versus Day. What could possibly happen? Both entered the arena, and the fight began. They didn't hold back, fighting with all their strength. Jin used Taekwondo techniques and struck Day's knee. Day retaliated by hitting Jin in the same spot he had hit Mira, then backed away. But Jin said, "I won't forgive you for what you did to our friend." He used his ultimate skill and threw Day to the edge of the arena. Jin approached Day to help him up so they could continue the fight, but Day tricked him and prepared to kill him by using all his strength. Meanwhile, Mira had finished her treatment and was discharged. She found many people gathered in front of the operating room. As she approached, she saw a girl crying over the body of a man who had died. The girl said, "You said you would settle your business with him before you died. Wake up. Day did all of this for you." Sadly, the man had passed away. After seeing this, Mira realized everything and understood why Day had treated her the way he did. Back at the fight, Day dominated, hitting Jin multiple times until he fell to the ground. The referee began counting, and if Jin didn't get up, he would lose. At that moment, Park approached Day and said, "Your friend is in very bad condition. We couldn't save him. He has passed away." Day was shocked, and his grief ran deep. Jin stood up, and the referee stopped counting. Jin attacked Day again, hitting him all over his body. Day didn't realize what was happening and allowed himself to be beaten, nearly losing. Suddenly, Mira called out to Day loudly, saying, "You were 200 times stronger when fighting me." She told him to come closer, and when Day approached, Mira handed him a letter from his deceased friend. Day read the letter while the referee urged Jin to continue the fight, but Jin didn't listen. After reading the letter, Day recovered and re-entered the fight with renewed spirit. Jin also became more motivated, saying, "Let's continue." At that moment, Park said, "Is the tiger about to appear now?" The two fighters once again attacked each other with all their strength. Day remembered the words from his friend's letter. "I know you joined this tournament for me, but it seems it's too late, and I will die. I have no regrets, and I don't want you to have any either. Fight for yourself with all your strength." and don't lose. Most importantly, support your friends and never betray them. Goodbye, my friend. By this time, the arena was burning with the intensity of the battle. Day struck Gene with his ultimate move, thinking he had won. However, at that moment, the tiger appeared. Gene laughed and attacked Day with a legendary strike so powerful that it shattered the arena. The referee then announced Jin's victory in the match. Filled with joy, Gene approached Day and helped him up. Mira also came closer and helped them. Finally, the three friends were reunited. The scene shifted to a dark forest where Jin's grandfather was sitting. An old man surrounded by the Nox gang was there. The gang leader approached him and offered for him to join them. The old man's name was Taejin, and he rejected the offer, saying, "Join you? Only in your dreams." The gang leader became angry, and a battle began between them. Elsewhere, the high school tournament was still in its early stages, and the participants were getting ready. 3 participants from each region would be chosen. Gene and Day were selected because they were in first and second place. The third participant would be chosen from the winner of the match between Mira and the person who had previously defeated Gene. That person tried to attack Mira, but she managed to break his bones and win. With that, our trio would advance to the final round. Meanwhile, Park and the officials were observing the winners. Park's attention was drawn to 2 students, and he felt pleased to see them. He then discussed something called the key, saying that it must appear in the final test. He also suspected that the Nox gang might try to destroy everything. Park decided that it was time to summon the 6. Gene, Mira, and Dai were on their way home when an old man carefully observed Gene. The old man passed by Gene and then disappeared. It turns out that the old man went to meet Park and was one of the 6 that Park had mentioned. The old man was known as the Divine Doctor. He told Park that he had seen Gene coming here and had heard that Gene ate the cursed fruit, but nothing happened to him. The Divine Doctor wanted to make Gene his disciple. Park agreed and mentioned the Nox gang's attack on Taejin, Jin's grandfather. At that time, Taejin had already defeated most of the gang members with just 1 leg. Taejin's strength was incredible, but then the gang leader launched a huge attack from the sky, destroying the entire place and brutally attacking Taejin. Meanwhile, Mira was walking around before the tournament and met one of the judges. They sat together, and the judge congratulated Mira for advancing to the next round. Mira felt weak compared to Gene and Dai, and she didn't know what to do to match them. The judge reassured her, saying that Mira could still improve during the upcoming matches. If Mira could master the moon sword technique, no one would be able to defeat her. The judge then prepared to leave with his family, but he noticed something strange about a man handing out toys to children. The man looked suspicious, so the judge told his wife to leave with their child while he went back to confront the man. The judge said, "I know you're from the Nox gang, aren't you?" The man smiled and said, "Exactly," then prepared to fight. Elsewhere, Dai went to see Park to ask him something. Dai said, "There's a strange power that people are using in the matches. I want to know what it is." Park responded, "That's Cheriok." Dai was confused and asked, "What is Cheriok?" Park explained that this power is extremely rare, possessed by less than 1% of people. Cheriok allows a person to summon creatures from another world and use them in battle. Park also mentioned that most of the opponents they would face in the next round would be using Cheriok. In another place, Gene was training for the tournament, but he was playing around more than actually training. He saw a balloon stuck in a tree and tried to grab it. As he tried, the branch broke. However, Gene quickly spun his body and avoided the fall in an incredible way. Suddenly, the old man from earlier appeared and placed something on Jin's leg. Gene was surprised but then felt his leg return to normal. It seemed the old man had come to train him. Elsewhere, 2 contestants stood together, and there appeared to be some long-standing animosity between them. One of them, named Ilpo, had a good and honorable attitude. However, the other contestant looked like someone who wouldn't hesitate to cheat. A big fight seemed to be brewing between them. Days passed, and the time finally came for the final tournament. However, the previous judge was no longer there and had been replaced by another. It turned out the former judge had been killed by a Nox member. That Nox member then attacked Commissioner Q, and the fight began. The first match was finally announced, and Jin's team would be facing their opponents. 2 teams were preparing to fight, and Gene was feeling very excited. Mira warned him, "Be careful. These people might use the same powers we've seen before." Gene replied, "Don't worry. I've got new powers too," referring to the technique he had learned from the old man. He stepped into the arena, and so did his opponent. Gene looked at his opponent seriously, then pressed a few points on his body and said, "In 1 hour, my energy will reach its maximum limit." This was one of the techniques the old man had taught him. His opponent began to worry, but Gene didn't move. He said, "Hey, I pressed the wrong point. It seems like I can't move. Could you not hit me?" However, his opponent attacked him and struck his head hard, which made the old man furious. "You're embarrassing us, Gene." The first match ended with Jin's defeat, and if they lost again, they would be eliminated from the tournament. Next, it was Dai's turn to enter the arena. This guy looked strong, even though he was still in high school. The match started, and at first, Dai dominated, mercilessly breaking his opponent's bones. Everyone thought his opponent would give up, but a girl from his team said he'll never surrender, and began to share the man's backstory. He had always failed exams, but never gave up. He repeated the years again and again without ever surrendering. The girl considered him the embodiment of true failure. But one day, after losing his second consecutive final match, he became furious and threw down his sword. The man approached her, repaired her sword, and said, "Do you know what's most important for a person? The fighting spirit." Those words inspired the girl to keep training and never give up. Back to the fight. The man gathered his strength and used his special technique. He took a hit from his opponent and fell to the edge of the arena, but he didn't give up. With a high spirit, he stood back up and continued the battle. Finally, Dai won the match with great difficulty, and both Jin and Mira were overjoyed. At the same time, a man who had previously attacked a commissioner was celebrating his victory. He said, "I just defeated one of the strongest commissioners. I'll definitely get promoted in the gang." However, suddenly, the commissioner stood up and attacked him with full force, breaking his arm instantly. The man was shocked. "How is this possible? I already injured you." The commissioner launched a barrage of attacks, breaking his other arm and leaving the man helpless. Back in the arena, Mira was getting ready to fight against a girl from the opposing team. The fight began, and Mira dominated with her quick attacks. The girl seemed to be on the verge of defeat, but she heard words of encouragement from her teammate. She gathered her strength and used her special technique to attack Mira. Although Mira tried to dodge, the girl's attack was too strong. However, Mira recalled the sword technique taught to her by the referee and managed to evade the attack, then landed a kick, ending the match in victory. At the same time, two gang members started attacking the commissioner, but the commissioner was able to hold his ground. Just when it seemed he was about to be defeated, another commissioner arrived to help him, turning the fight into a 2 versus 2. The battle between them was fierce, with both sides using all their strength. In the end, one of the gang members took his partner and fled the scene. A third person who was there laughed and then destroyed the entire building. Meanwhile, the school tournament resumed, with the second round of matches about to begin. In the arena, the opponent stared at him, ready to fight. The boy said to Taki, "I won't lose to you, and I'll take your head, old man." But Taki didn't let him finish his sentence. He used his power on him, crushing his entire body. The audience was terrified, and his servant couldn't bear it any longer. He ran toward Taki to stop him, but Taki struck him down and continued stomping on his head in front of everyone. Mira said to Jean, "I won't let you go this time to save him." Jean replied, "All right, just watch the arena." And suddenly, she saw Deep kick Taki away from the girl. The referee also intervened and stopped the fight between them. The boy, who was breathing heavily in the arena, was furious and used his power to kill Taki. But do you think Taki would die or be affected? No, my friend. He floated toward the boy and punched him in the stomach, cornering the boy's shark, and started breaking every bone in his body. The boy looked very dangerous, my friend. They took the injured person to the emergency treatment room, and the heavenly doctor was going to treat him personally. The boy's grandfather approached Park and said, "Why did you remove Taki from the tournament?" Park replied, "Because he might be the key." The grandfather said, "All right," and left. By the way, he's one of the 6 important people. Due to Deep's interference in the tournament, he will be temporarily suspended and won't be able to fight in the next match, and the victory will go to his opponent. This means if they lose one more match, they will be eliminated. Mira sat, shouting at him at that moment, extremely angry. Meanwhile, the third match in the qualifiers began, where Beck's team faced their opponent. Beck's team lost the first match, and if they lost again, they would be out of the tournament. Before the second match started, Beck approached the girl on her team and gave her a strategy to use in the fight. She followed the strategy perfectly and easily defeated her opponent. Beck seemed smart, and her mind was really sharp. She then stepped into the arena, and this was the match that would determine their fate, whether they would continue or end it here. The boy facing Beck looked arrogant and confident. He said, "Ready for me yet?" and activated his tribe technique. Everyone felt his power, but Beck was unfazed. Beck then said, "You look strong," and they began attacking each other. Beck initially dominated the fight, trapping the boy, who was furious and couldn't do anything. He tried to attack Beck, but she easily deflected the blow. At that moment, the boy activated his power, but Beck used her transcendent technique to dodge it effortlessly, then kicked him hard, nearly ending the match. Jean was shocked when he saw Beck's jacket, as it had the same tiger image as his grandfather's clothes. Jin's team finished watching the match and left. As they walked home, Mira tried to talk to Jean, but he seemed distracted by something. He said, "I'll go ahead," and left. He laughed because Park had asked Jean yesterday, saying they found a lot of blood at the site of his grandfather's fight with the Nox group. It seemed like his grandfather had been captured or imprisoned. He was lost in thought when Beck approached and said, "I'm your fan, you know." Beck then challenged him to a little fight. Gene replied, "What are you doing? Just relax." Beck then apologized for what happened and said, "Sorry, I got too excited." Beck then asked Gene about the tiger on his jacket. "Where did you get that jacket?" Beck explained what had happened and said it was a tribute to his grandfather. Nothing more. Gene was touched by Beck's story. Suddenly, Taki attacked them from behind, but Beck managed to block his punch and said, "If you do that again, I won't forgive you," with a serious expression. Beck then left. The next day, Deputy Q was furious, smashing Park's desk and saying, "Why did you let the judge's wife and child die? Does your heart lack compassion?" Park used his power on Q, pinning him against the wall, and said, "Do you know who you're talking to? And this is the cost of the damage you've caused. Your salary will be cut for 9 months." After that, Q went to the rooftop and discovered the truth. The girl told him that the judge's wife and child were not dead. They were just statues created to hide them. Park had done his job correctly, but Q remained angry. Someone was left behind, but it was okay. Meanwhile, Kyo started searching for a coin and, quite literally, found a piece of metal, picking it up with hope. Dai saw him and felt sorry for him, then gave him food and said, "Look, I want you to teach me how to share, and in return, I will bring you food every day and help you." Kyo agreed and asked why Dai wanted to learn how to share. Dai then said, "Because my friend is in trouble, and I want to be there to help him." He was referring to Gene. Kyo agreed, and they decided to start the lessons. At the same time, the Nox group held a meeting to prepare for attacking the tournament and obtaining the key. It seemed the situation was about to heat up. Meanwhile, Gene sat at home, feeling very sad about his grandfather, but he didn't know what to do. He remembered the last day he spent with his grandfather on his 6th birthday when they took a photo together. His grandfather said, "One day, you'll celebrate your birthday with your friends." After that, his grandfather left him. Today, Gene was 177 years old and feeling very down, but just as he was wallowing, Mira and Day suddenly appeared, celebrating his birthday. Gene was confused about how they knew it was his birthday, and they answered that Jin's watch sent a message about his birthday. The three of them, Mira, Day, and Gina, had agreed to celebrate it together. They brought plenty of food and gifts for Gene, which made him feel better and return to normal. However, the next day, on the day of the tournament, someone knocked on Jin's door and left a message. Gene opened the envelope and found a photo of his grandfather tied up and injured, with an address written on it. Panicked, Gene immediately rode his bike to the location. Throughout the ride, he felt anxious and fearful for his grandfather's fate. Meanwhile, their match was about to start, but Mira and Dai couldn't find Gene anywhere. A girl approached them and said, "Your match has started. If you don't enter the arena now, you'll be disqualified." Dai then told Mira, "I'll find Gene and bring him back. You need to win the first fight, but take your time." Mira agreed and went to the arena. Her opponent this time wasn't easy, and the situation was incredibly tense. Meanwhile, Gene arrived at the location according to the address in the message, opened the door, and found his grandfather with his hands severed, tied with chains, and unconscious. Gene was terrified, ran towards his grandfather, and tried every way to wake him up. Suddenly, he heard his grandfather laughing, his neck turning 180 degrees, and bacon, an explosion hit Gene, completely destroying the place. At the same time, Myra's match had already begun, and her opponent was Marin. The referee announced the start of the fight, and Mira attacked immediately without mercy. However, Marin had coated his body in oil, making Myra's sword ineffective as it kept slipping off. Marin then summoned someone and threw a sword at Mira, which shocked her because it was her own sword that had been taken from her earlier. Mira asked Marin to return it, but he refused and attacked her again viciously. Mira tried to strike him with her sword, but it broke. Marin then revealed Myra's original sword and said, "This is a national treasure. Too bad it was ever in your hands." He slashed Mira with the sword, injuring her stomach, then lifted her up and slapped her several times. Marin struck her again, and Mira fell to the ground, struggling to get up, but Marin gave her no mercy. He said, "Your efforts are futile. Your friend will never come." Mira was furious when she realized they had done something to Gene. She stood up and said, "There's no way you could do anything to him. Gene would never lose to you." But Marin hit her again, and Mira collapsed, nearly out of strength. Meanwhile, one of the Nox members near Gene was pleased with his victory. But Gene suddenly got up and asked, "Who are you?" The man created many clones of himself and said, "This tournament doesn't need weaklings like you." Gene was overwhelmed from all sides but managed to fight off many of them. However, the clones kept coming back. They dragged Gene to an underground place where he saw the people he had to face. He realized this was all part of the Nox group's plan. Gene asked the man, "Are you the one who did this to them?" The man replied, "Yes, and soon, you will be like them." Gene grew furious and destroyed all the clones. He stood up, pressed 3 points on his body, and said, "Get ready, because you're about to die now." Meanwhile, Mira was soaring through the air, almost ready to give up, when she suddenly found herself in a strange place and heard someone say, "You're weak." Mira replied, "Yes, I'm weak, but I won't give up." The person extended a hand and said, "All right, I'll give you strength." Suddenly, energy enveloped Mira, and the arena was set ablaze. The marine sword disappeared from her hand and returned to her. Finally, Mira mastered the power of her hero-sharing ability. Marin, terrified, activated his own power-sharing ability, but it was too late. Mira dodged all his attacks and with a single strike, completely finished him off. Incredible! However, after all those hits, her legs could no longer support her, and she said she was about to fall. At the last moment, Jean intervened, downplaying what had happened. Jean stepped forward and prepared to face his opponent and defeat him. His opponent asked about the person with him, but Jean did not respond. The boy grew furious and attacked with all his strength. "Bake him!" Jean dodged the attack and said, "Do you know what happened to him?" Kicks and punches kept coming, but the boy couldn't move. Jean unleashed amazing moves like pudding. The boy kept getting hit until he could barely breathe in front of him. Do you think Jean would stop hitting him? No, my friend. Jean then unleashed his true skills and crushed him. The boy stood up again and tried to hit him, but Jin's second true skill ended everything decisively. Everyone watching was amazed by Jin's power. A tiger raises another tiger, it seems, they said. After the match, the scene shifted to a flashback of Quebec's life. They were in the training grounds, and a girl named Sun came asking why he trained harder than the others. Quebec answered that it was because of a promise he made to someone long ago. The girl laughed after understanding, then walked away. Sun was one of the first people to make Quebec feel comfortable, but Quebec later had to fight her without showing mercy. The girl fell to the ground and surrendered to him. However, Teki rushed toward her legs and broke them. Quebec's heart shattered at the sight, leaving him unable to move. The doctor checked Sun's legs and said that over time, her bones would heal, and she'd be able to walk again, but she would never return to the martial arts world. It was a devastating blow to her heart. Quebec heard the news and went to find Teki. He beat and thrashed him in front of everyone in a state of sorrow. That night, an official came and handed an invitation to join the tournament. If Quebec won, he could make any wish come true, including restoring Sun's legs. That was his real reason for entering the tournament. But after seeing Jean, Quebec remembered his promise to his grandfather and felt conflicted. Then the girl used her power on the three of them and began interrogating them. Jean explained everything, and the kids couldn't believe it. Park then said that Nox was the gang that had kidnapped Taejin and was threatening all Sharyu users. "Wow, it looks like this tournament is going to get crazy," they said. At that moment, Jean asked Park, "How do we defeat Nox and bring my grandfather back?" Park replied, "The three of you are weak and won't be able to do anything. But if you win this tournament, maybe I can give you some information." The kids agreed and prepared themselves. The next match would pit Jin's team against Beck's team, and it seemed like things were about to explode. The first match was between D and Song-Ah. What will happen? The two stepped into the ring and began fighting. The battle moved quickly between the two. Song-Ah landed a hit on D, and D was staggered. She gathered her strength and attacked back, but Song-Ah dodged. D tried to strike again, but Song-Ah's hit disrupted her balance, causing her to fail. D lost her balance and couldn't stand anymore. Song-Ah gathered her energy in her legs and used her Shiryu technique, slamming D hard enough to crack the ring. Everyone thought D was done for. But do you think D would give up after seeing her friend in such a situation? No, my friend. D used her Sharyu power and dodged the attack. She then struck Song-Ah, sending her flying to the edge of the ring, and it looked like she was about to lose. D's heart told her, "Enough, surrender," fearing she would face the same fate as Sun. But the girl stood up again and said, "Whether I surrender or keep fighting is my business." She attacked D with all her strength again, but in the end, D won, and the girl lost. After the fight, Sun came and said to Beck, "I heard you entered this tournament for me. Thank you for thinking of me, but I want you to fight for yourself. Your match against Jean is something you've waited for a long time. So don't think of me anymore. Do what you want." Beck's heart was touched by those words, and he felt stronger. It looks like there's going to be a big fight, my friend. At the same time, the leader of the Nox gang arrived and started killing the team members one by one. Park learned of his presence and went to stop him, and it seemed like a huge fight was about to unfold. At the same time, Jean and Beck stepped into the ring, ready to fight. Jean said to Beck, "From the look on your face, it seems like this is going to be a great fight." And indeed, it was an amazing battle, full of power. Jean and Beck clashed with various techniques, but it was clear that Beck was superior, and Jin's skills were waning in front of him. While fighting, Beck pointed out Jin's weaknesses. "First, you're bad at close combat, so you'll keep getting hit." Jean backed off and said, "Okay, try this." Beck easily parried his attack and kicked him in the head. Second weakness, Your attack intentions are too obvious. Anyone can guess where you're going to strike. Jean replied, all right, let's see how you handle this. Jean used his original skill, but Beck also used his original skill and effortlessly blocked the attack. After that, Jean fell to the ground, his body aching. Beck said, third weakness. Your skills put too much strain on your body. He's making you feel so weak, and literally his words are bringing you down. Jean attacked again, but he didn't know what to do. He thought hard to find a way to deal with him. Finally, he found it. He attacked his heart using Myra's moon sword skill and said, this fight will end soon. Then Cebu attacked again, but Jean dodged the blow and then struck him with his first technique, pushing him away. Jean said, the second weakness has been eliminated. The fight between them heated up, becoming a visually impressive spectacle. At the same time, the battle with Brock, the leader of Nox, began. The leader used his unification technique, and from the sky, a giant sword fell toward them. Everyone couldn't believe it. It looked like he was going to kill him. Brock used his unification technique and started to fight back, but did you think the leader would just stand there? No. The leader used his power again and called his followers to help him. A strange gate appeared in the sky, and from there, a large, dark figure descended, pressing the sword down. Brock had already reached his limit. Musician CEO saw the situation and turned his gaze to the National Kanzo, then started using his power. By the way, he's one of the 6 who used different weapons, which then headed for the sword and began to destroy it. The commissioners also started attacking the gang, and the situation became even more tense. The musician used all his power and summoned a creature that held the sword with its teeth and destroyed it. The Nox leader was shocked. Brock had truly reached his limit. But at that moment, Cebu and Jean were at the height of their spirits. Cebu kept teaching Jean about his weak points, and Jean continued to improve. What had happened earlier was that Taejin knew he would leave Jean one day. So before leaving, he asked his heart to teach Jean how to fight while watching him. His heart, of course, agreed very cheerfully, and now he was fulfilling his promise. After that, they both launched their final attacks. Cebu's dragon managed to defeat his heart, and the boy fell to the ground, seemingly defeated. The referee started counting, and everyone thought he had lost, but suddenly his energy dropped to -1. The key appeared, and everyone felt its presence. At that moment, Cebu encountered the nine-tailed fox. His unification technique was activated, and the entire arena was set ablaze. Everyone was shocked by his power. Cebu emerged from the fire in a new form, ready to destroy everything. He advanced like a lion, and everyone felt his new energy. Even he could hardly contain it. His unification technique started to tremble, and he knew this was the key. At that moment, Park Mujin noticed the fox's appearance and was extremely pleased. The Nox leader, after realizing the key had appeared, decided to leave it and immediately went to kill it, but Park wouldn't let him. At the same time, the battle between Jean and his heart continued. Jean calmed himself and cautiously approached his heart, trying to understand its new moves. However, his heart skills had advanced significantly, and he attacked Jean mercilessly. Jean didn't know what to do. His heart was truly unstoppable, and the boy rose again to strike back. As his heart was about to hit him again, Jean suddenly disappeared. Yes, he used one of his heart's new techniques and dodged slightly. Jean attacked from a distance again, but his heart didn't give him a chance. With one blow, he knocked him to the ground. Jean was completely exhausted and thought, can I do nothing against him? His heart was also beginning to tire, and Jean noticed. He seized the opportunity and started attacking, looking for an opening. The two exchanged blows. Jean began to understand the situation and said, I see your game now. You're not someone different. Your power has just increased. And while that's happening, I have a solution. Mira and her friends were shocked to see that he hadn't given up yet. Both then recalled all their memories as they launched their attacks with full force. The situation grew more intense. Cebu gathered all his energy and said, come on, let's finish this fight. He attacked Jean with full confidence in his victory. But suddenly, strange and blurry memories flashed in Jin's mind. Everything turned white. All the attacks vanished, and the audience was confused about what was happening. Even his own heart was puzzled. Jin's energy was so immense that even Cebu couldn't believe it. Cebu then screamed and prepared to attack again, gathering all his energy. However, Jin also unleashed all his power. Cebu flew upward, the vortex utterly destroying him. The boy pierced through the sky. Just as he was about to act, a giant hand suddenly appeared from above, shattering his bones and ending the fight. It was incredible. Jin truly shocked everyone, and his energy was no joke. Afterward, the referee declared Jin the winner of the match. The audience and everyone present were in disbelief. Dai and Mira approached their friend with great joy and said, was that your fusion technique? You're amazing. Why did you make us worry? At the same time, Cebu's team started to regain consciousness. He asked, did I lose? They replied, yes. He then accepted his defeat with a smile, seemingly satisfied. After that, both were transferred for treatment of their injuries. The news reached Park, and he was shocked to hear how the fox could lose. He wondered who could be so strong to face him. The leader of the Nox gang was also surprised and grabbed the girl before tossing her aside. He seemed to be waiting for the right moment, taking advantage of everyone's distraction to escape. Is this just a beginning? At the same time, everyone started celebrating the huge victory, and they were very happy. In fact, they welcomed it with joy, while his friends stood by his side, joking and laughing. Shortly afterward, Jean came over and handed out cold drinks, making sure everyone was okay. It seemed they were growing closer to one another, and the defeat and victory no longer mattered to them. Later, his friends went out to buy something, and he started talking to his heart. He talked about his grandfather and what had happened to him because of the Nox gang. He realized he had to win to free his grandfather from them. With a strong resolve, his heart understood and said, "Don't worry, no one can save him but you." Everything seemed to be going well for them. However, at night, the boy was touched by his energy, and his mind started to become disturbed. He left his room, and his servant noticed the situation and grew very anxious. The boy then met Take and began to fight him. Take tried to avoid the attacks, but this time the boy's energy was so high that Take struggled to keep up. The servant arrived at the scene and distracted the boy. Take took the opportunity to strike, and the two of them began fighting fiercely. Take delivered a powerful blow, and the boy finally looked at the servant standing nearby, with an open wound in his stomach. Take couldn't stand still, his mind increasingly controlled by the force that was absorbing the servant's energy, empowering him many times over. The fight continued, and they crashed into his friend's clinic. Both eventually passed out. My heart was shocked by the situation and immediately declared an emergency. People tried to capture the monster, but they were absorbed by its energy instead. My heart then tried to strike, dodging a few attacks, but it didn't work. Take tried to help and kept attacking repeatedly. However, the boy suddenly ejected the servant from within himself, fully healing his body. He grew larger and began abducting people around him, including his friends. My heart was terrified, thinking about what would happen to them. The servant finally regained consciousness and rushed toward the boy, calming him, saying that he was all right. At that moment, Take came from behind and sliced the boy's upper body, saving his friends. But they weren't completely safe, as one of their friends had lost a hand. My heart almost went crazy seeing that. The boy, consumed with rage, transformed into a fox, mercilessly attacking Take, shattering glass, and completely losing control. Meanwhile, the leader of the Nox gang took to the streets and activated his powers. Strange creatures started descending from the sky, causing panic among everyone. Park Mujin, witnessing the situation, could no longer hold back and announced the end of the high school championship competition, initiating a grand battle. Everything spiraled into chaos. At the same time, Jean and Mira were watching all this, unable to comprehend what was happening. The Nox gang leader also used his powers to open a massive gate in the sky, from which a giant black monster emerged, continuously shifting its form. Fear spread like wildfire. The servant was still grieving over the death of the child, crying incessantly. The child's grandfather arrived and saw the two of them, understanding everything that had transpired with Take and the Nox gang, and swore not to forgive them. "Oh, and by the way, that grandfather is incredibly strong, my friend." Simultaneously, Take began recalling events from his life, especially when his mother left him and handed him over to a wealthy man who only cared about power. The old man raised Take with hatred, stressing that victory was everything. Take grew up with the determination to win, using the Nox gang's power to his advantage, even killing the old man and taking all his possessions. He vowed to himself that he would never lose again. Then, Take remembered the time his heart was previously attacked. His energy reignited, creating strange creatures. The battle grew more brutal, with the monsters viciously attacking the heart. The heart recalled the wounds of his friends and their shattered dreams caused by Take. Furious, he attacked the monsters mercilessly, destroying them one by one. At that moment, Jean and Mira arrived at the battleground, witnessing the chaos. Take was being severely beaten by the heart, which wasn't giving him a moment to breathe. As Take continued to be pummeled, he remembered the words of the old man who raised him, saying he couldn't afford to fail. He had to keep winning. Take's rage flared up, and he activated his powers, summoning a monster that devoured the heart and absorbed its energy. Everyone was stunned. A surge of key energy was released, and everyone felt it. Take tried to take advantage of the situation to claim the key and absorb its power, but another monster suddenly attacked, preventing him. In the end, the key fell into the hands of the Nox gang leader, who was overjoyed to obtain it. However, before fully merging with it, a man from Jin's side suddenly struck the leader's head. Jean was the one who took the key. Right after, the creature sprouted a second head from its body, and its energy surged dramatically. Park Mujin reached the limits of his power, and it seemed they were on the brink of defeat. At the same time, the head of the FBI was monitoring everything. After assessing the situation, he decided to destroy the city along with everyone in it to defeat the Knox gang. The girl found out what was happening and informed Park. Then, the child realized that a missile was heading towards them. He decided to place the children inside his barrier to protect them from the attack. Indeed, everyone entered a very strange place, and no one understood what was happening. Dai and Mira were there with them. The translator quickly followed his heart and then fainted from exhaustion. After that, Day activated his power on them to heal them. At the same time, Jean arrived at the heart and saw it bleeding profusely. He pressed several points on its body to stop the bleeding. The child regained consciousness, and Jean handed him the key. He said, "I don't know what this is or what it's for, but it was inside you." The heart responded, "Yes, I also don't know why this is inside me, but there is great energy within it. Take it and protect it, Jean." The child agreed. At the same time, Take arrived where Dai and Mira were, asking about the key. The children didn't know where the key was and were shocked by Take's transformation. They tried to flee from him, but Take, furious, said, "I'll kill you." He unleashed strange creatures that viciously attacked them. Dai and Mira activated their combined powers and began fighting the creatures, but they were too powerful, and it seemed they wouldn't be able to defeat them. At that moment, Jean left the heart behind and began searching for Dai and Mira. After wandering around, he finally found them, but they were gravely injured by Take. The children couldn't move. Take also noticed that Jean had the key and said, "Give it to me." At that moment, Dai, lying on the ground, spoke with difficulty, telling his friend, "Hurry, get out of here. This guy is insane." Jean felt exhausted and asked, "Why did you do this to them?" Take didn't care and replied, "The same thing will happen to you if you don't hand over the key now." Jean, enraged, said, "All right." At the same time, the outside world was in chaos, and battles were happening everywhere. Park had reached the limit of his strength, unable to withstand the attacks from the Knox gang leader, who was nearly killing him. However, someone came to save him, attempting to fight off the attacks alongside Park. But that person was also nearing their limit. The Knox gang leader was overjoyed, at the peak of his happiness, waiting for destruction to unfold at any moment. Suddenly, a green light enveloped the entire city, transporting everyone to the mountains, including civilians and fighters, except for the Knox gang leader. He was shocked by what had happened and turned around, only to see Ji-san arriving, using his powers to destroy incoming missiles. Ji-san then attacked the Knox creature, trying to annihilate it in midair. The Knox gang leader watched in fear, begging Ji-san to stop, but Ji-san did not relent. He unleashed his power again, summoning a meteor that crushed and destroyed the creature. After witnessing the attack, the Knox gang leader was terrified, pleading for Ji-san to stop, but the old man said, "In your dreams, I'll avenge my grandson and drag you into destruction." Suddenly, the creature's barrier shattered, followed by a massive explosion that obliterated the entire area. Everyone who witnessed the explosion couldn't believe what had just happened. At the same time, Take launched a ferocious attack on Jean. The blow knocked them out of the mountain, bringing them back to the city. They looked around, confused by what was happening, and saw the old man sitting on the ground, his energy depleted. The Knox gang leader had also reached his limit. Jean was still approaching them, but Take quickly grabbed him and said, "Enough. Hand over the key." Jean gave him the key. Take's energy transferred into it, and his body began to change, emitting strange things. He looked down at them, sneering, and said, "You're all going to die." At that moment, Park and his team were analyzing the situation, predicting what would happen next. They said, "Ji-san is done, and so is the Knox gang leader. Now it's just the kids left. But what will happen?" Mira and Dai could feel Take's immense power and decided to flee immediately, but time deceived them. Take caught Mira and broke her bones. Dai tried to save her, but was struck down hard as well. Take kept attacking anyone in his way. Jean gathered his strength from behind, preparing to attack, but Take caught him and said, "Your efforts are futile. Anyone who doesn't listen will die now." Hearing this, Jean was furious, remembering how Take had hurt his friends and their hearts. His rage grew, gathering his power, and he finally managed to break free. He pressed the power points on his body and said, "I'll show you your place." After that, he attacked with all his might. Jin's energy increased drastically, and he kept striking Fiddick without giving him time to rest. Mira and Dai joined in, hitting Fiddick with him. The three of them attacked him from every angle. But do you think they could defeat the transformed Fiddick? No way. Fiddick trapped them, and they felt helpless against him. He summoned strange creatures that attacked Jean and separated Mira. Mira ran toward him quickly, but suddenly, Fiddick stood over them and said, "Goodbye." He released a red light and hurled it at them to finish them off. Both of Jin's friends thought this was the end, but Dai came in and took the hit for them. He then looked at his friends with pride and said, "Run." Jin was shocked by his friend's sacrifice. His anger peaked, and he began to recall his past as the Monkey King. Back then, he was surrounded by monsters from all sides. His followers had almost given up, but Jin stood up and fought them one by one. He summoned his weapon, and it came to him. His eyes turned blue, and his energy fused with the weapon, giving him immense power. Everyone watching was astonished by the overwhelming force, unable to believe it was coming from Jin. At that moment, Jin approached his weapon, and Fiddick also sensed Jin's immense power. Fiddick said, "Show me your final strength." The two clashed with intense ferocity. Their battle was so fierce that it seemed the earth couldn't bear them. Fiddick wasn't an easy opponent, and he attacked Jin while summoning his creatures. But Jin didn't give up. He continued to strike the creatures one by one, breaking their bones, then flew and attacked Fiddick again. Everyone watching was stunned, unable to believe what they were seeing. At that moment, Fiddick managed to grab Jin and drag him to the ground. Jin, beaten, grew even angrier and said, "Didn't I tell you I'd teach you some manners?" Jin used his weapon, flying at high speed, and Fiddick couldn't do anything but get tossed around. Jin dashed towards his weapon and said, "Get ready." He gathered all his strength and delivered a powerful punch, sending Fiddick flying. Jin said, "This is for D, my best friend. The second punch is for Mira. The third punch is for my heart and my friends. The fourth punch is for you, buddy. The fifth punch is enough." Fiddick fell to the ground, defeated. He recalled when Jin had hit him before and became enraged. He tried to use all his power to finish Jin, but Jin countered with a lightning attack, hitting him hard. Fiddick's bones broke, and everyone was astonished by Jin's strength. After that, Jin was too exhausted to stand, and he collapsed. However, suddenly, Fiddick transformed into a giant monster that tried to capture Jin and drain his energy. Mira and D came to his aid and attempted to escape from the monster. Jin tried to attack again, but his strength was depleted. He almost fell, but suddenly Jin's weapon returned and said, "There's nothing wrong with relying on your friends for a moment." Mira and D then joined forces to fight the monster. The battle grew more intense. By combining their energy, they managed to break Fiddick's bones. Even so, Fiddick continued to fight fiercely. However, at that moment, the power of Jin's heart reached its peak, and he used his strongest technique. In an instant, the fight was over. Jin and his friends succeeded in defeating Fiddick. The sun rose again, and everyone cheered in joy. Fiddick finally ran out of energy, and his heart stopped. Jin accepted no help from anyone, even though his heart was heavy from everything that had happened. At that moment, a girl walked into one of the caves beneath the city. She found a card and saw a giant gate in front of her. The key to the gate was the card she had found. Meanwhile, elsewhere, everyone felt relieved that the battle was over. Even though many had lost limbs and their dreams were shattered, they knew this was their fate. But suddenly, a woman appeared carrying the girl who had been in the cave. The woman congratulated them all. They didn't understand why she was congratulating them, and they asked who the girl was. The girl introduced herself and said, "I am one of the 6 most important people in this tournament, and I'm here to grant your wishes." Jin was shocked and immediately ran to her to ask about his grandfather. But he remembered that this victory wasn't his alone. He needed to consult with D and Mira first. Both allowed Jin to make the wish, saying, "Ask for whatever you want. We just want to help you." Jin wanted to know about his grandfather, but he didn't want to leave all the wounded and those with dreams behind. So, he chose to ask for the healing of everyone injured in the battle. The girl used her powers and healed everyone, even restoring their lost limbs. Everyone was astonished. Jin felt very happy for his friends, even though he still felt sad about not knowing his grandfather's whereabouts. He asked the girl if she knew anything about his grandfather, and she replied that Jin's grandfather was still alive, although his energy was weak. Jin was overjoyed to hear this, but due to his exhaustion, he fainted. When Jin woke up, he was in his apartment and found Mira and Dee celebrating their victory. Everyone was very happy. However, at that moment, Jin's grandfather was in a strange place, being tortured by the Nox gang. They were experimenting on him, and the situation was becoming dire.